hors d'oeuvres. I nearly dropped my coffee mug from how hard I laughed. A floating lake ceremony. She was actually trying to spin this into a planned event. Never mind that people were clutching overturned tables, that a small child was trying to fish a Barbie shoe out of the water with a plastic fork, or that half the guests looked like they wanted to jump and swim for shore. The news chopper hovered lower. Someone must have tipped them off with the livestream link. Moments later, a reporter's voice echoed across a loudspeaker from the chopper. We are live over Lake Meredith, where a wedding celebration appears to be adrift. No official word yet on whether this was planned or a mishap. Karen doubled down on her act, smiling and waving like a pageant queen. The bride, now sitting cross-legged in a damp white dress, looked like she was about to scream. The groom, to his credit, kept a hand on her shoulder, either to comfort her or make sure she didn't jump. Back on shore, a few neighbors began to gather on their own docks, watching the spectacle with binoculars, lawn chairs, and even a few beers. I spotted Jim from 3 houses down recording with his old camcorder. He waved when he saw me looking. I gave him a nod. We both knew this would be the talk of the lake for years. Eventually, a rescue boat from the marina started making its way over, slowly, with a sheriff's deputy on board. They weren't rushing. Maybe they, too, understood that no one was in real danger, and this comedy of errors needed time to play out. When the boat finally reached the dock, Karen immediately ran up to the officer and began what I could only assume was an over-the-top recounting of the event. The officer didn't even write anything down. He just listened, nodded, then gestured toward the shore. The guests were escorted back in waves, one group at a time, while the dock was towed in the opposite direction toward the marina for inspection. Karen remained the last on board, standing at the edge, arms folded, seething. She looked across the lake right at me. I raised my mug in a mock toast. Her expression tightened like she had just bitten into a lemon. Later that evening, the neighborhood group chat exploded. The video was everywhere. Clips were being shared on every platform. Comments rolled in nonstop. People were calling it the wedding that set sail. One user dubbed it Titanic 2. Another said it looked like an avant-garde theater piece sponsored by Chaos. Someone even added music over the footage, setting Karen's megaphone speech to circus music. By sunset, I received a message from my old army buddy, now a county official, asking if I needed legal backup. I told him I hadn't touched a thing. The dock simply went where it wanted. He replied with 3 words. You magnificent bastard. Still, I knew it wasn't over. Karen would regroup. She would march into some office demanding consequences, retribution, and revenge. But I wasn't worried. Because what she didn't know yet was that everything she'd done had been caught on my security cameras. Her orders to staff. Her dismissal of my warnings. Her marching onto private property with a clipboard and no permission. I had it all. And I had plans for round 2. The emergency HOA meeting was scheduled less than 24 hours after the floating wedding fiasco. It wasn't technically an emergency meeting, but Karen labeled it one anyway. She had sent out a message through the community app late the previous night, filled with capital letters, passive aggression, and her signature threat that consequences will follow. The meeting took place in the rec center just up the hill from the lake, the same place where they usually hosted bingo nights and book club discussions. But tonight, the atmosphere buzzed like a hornet nest someone had kicked in. Everyone showed up. Not just the board members. Not just the HOA regulars. This time, even the folks who usually stayed quiet made an appearance, curiosity written all over their faces. Karen strutted into the room like she was walking into a courtroom she owned. Her blouse was perfectly pressed, her pearls extra shiny, and her expression was a cross between fake calm and bottled rage. She stood behind the podium and adjusted the mic like a politician about to make a public plea for sympathy. "Thank you for coming," she said, scanning the crowd. "As many of you know, an unfortunate incident occurred yesterday involving a private dock and a community celebration. Unfortunate was an understatement, and calling it a community celebration was a lie. A few folks in the audience exchanged glances. A couple even chuckled. Karen continued, trying to sound composed. We believe that the dock in question was manipulated in a way that endangered the safety of our guests and residents. There was no permit pulled, no safety inspection, and frankly, no warning. That last part was too much. I cleared my throat and raised my hand. Karen ignored it. I raised it higher and spoke without waiting. Actually, I gave you a very clear warning. I told you the dock was private. And I told you it wasn't secured. You brushed it off. Several people nodded, remembering the video that had gone viral just hours after the incident. It had made the rounds like wildfire. Everyone had seen the dock drift. Everyone had seen Karen standing front and center, pretending the chaos was all part of the plan. Karen tried to keep control of the room. That video was edited and taken out of context. The full story is more complicated. The people who were there know exactly what happened, I replied. And they also know you never asked for permission. You trespassed. You hosted an event you didn't have authority to hold. And now you're trying to play the victim. A woman in the front row spoke up. I was there. I nearly fell into the lake trying to save my purse. You never even asked us if it was safe. Another man said, my wife got sick from the food after it sat in the sun all day. Karen's eyes darted around as more residents started speaking, one after the other. The tide was turning and she could feel it. One of the board members, a retired firefighter named Paul, stood up. He had always been fair, quiet, and didn't get involved unless there was a real issue. Karen, he said, you've overstepped before, but this was beyond that. You endangered people. And worse, you tried to use your title to justify it. This isn't the first time you've acted like our private property is your playground. Karen's face flushed. Her hands gripped the podium. You're all missing the bigger picture. I was trying to create a beautiful event. Something we could all be proud of. This community needs unity. What this community needs, Paul cut in, is leadership that respects boundaries. And you clearly don't. The meeting spiraled from there. People brought up old grievances. Times Karen had entered yards without notice, fines she had issued for arbitrary rule violations, her habit of approving her own projects with no vote. By the end of the night, a motion had been made and seconded to vote on her removal as HOA president. Karen objected, of course, claimed the bylaws didn't allow such short notice. But the board decided to follow procedure and called for a vote the following week. Everyone left the room buzzing. Karen left first, practically sprinting to her car, sunglasses on even though it was well past dark. The next morning, I paid a visit to my lawyer. His office was across town, in a converted farmhouse with more books than furniture. I slid a flash drive across his desk. Everything's on there. Video, audio, timestamp. He plugged it in and clicked through the folders. I had captured everything from the morning of the wedding. Karen directing the setup, ignoring my warnings, scoffing when I said the dock wasn't safe. I even had audio of her bragging about how the HOA always backs her, no matter what. My lawyer leaned back and nodded slowly. We can file a cease and desist for trespassing, and you've got enough here for a small claims suit. Want to go that route? I thought for a second. Let's send the cease and desist first. Let her stew. Then we decide how deep we want to cut. He grinned. Got it. A few hours later, Karen received a letter via courier, complete with legal letterhead and a clear warning that any future unauthorized use of my property would be met with full legal action. She didn't respond. Not that day. But I saw her from across the street, staring at me with a look that could peel paint. I gave her a little wave and went back to trimming my hedges. 2 days later, she showed up on my doorstep with a tray of cupcakes. Not just any cupcakes. Fancy, overpriced, too sweet bakery ones in a box with a bow. I didn't even open the door. I watched her through the glass. She rang the bell again, forced a smile, and said she just wanted to apologize for the misunderstanding. I opened the door enough to talk, but not enough for her to see the security camera recording everything. Apology accepted, I said. But just so we're clear, you step on my dock again without permission, I'll have you charged with trespassing. And this time, I won't wait for the HOA board to catch up. Her smile twitched. I could see the fire behind her eyes.